Assalamu alaikum. I hope you're all doing well, inshallah. I have been a little bit sick. I wanted to upload this video a couple of days ago, but I just haven't been feeling very well. And so I've come back with a video today with a really interesting topic to make us reflect on the concept of one-sidedness. And I have a question that you may have never asked yourself, but I want you to reflect on it. Have you ever stopped to consider your perspective on the world and how that perspective might actually be affecting your choices, your relationships, and even your future? Like, ask yourself, because something I've come to learn on my self-discovery journey, which I've been on for about 3 years now, most of us are unaware of our own worldly perspective, which then leaves us oblivious to whether or not it's negatively impacting our decisions and eroding the core of our ability to connect and to learn and develop, right? Like, we rarely question our own perspective. But now that I've brought it up, since I brought it up, you might be curious now, you might be thinking about it. You might want to stay tuned to hear more of what I have to say on that topic. So welcome back to my channel, guys. My name is Carmina. I'm a British Muslim revert and inner strength self-discovery practitioner, and I just love to talk about all things self-discovery, conscious development, and personal growth. Quite recently, I've started to explore a new avenue, which is the intersection between personality and religion, which is very interesting. So if you're interested in the science behind personality, or maybe you want to explore more of a religious route and have an interest in Islam, kind of got you on both ends of the spectrum, like, this is the place for you. Now, the title of this video is called My Journey Towards Overcoming One-Sidedness. And I know a lot of people are unfamiliar with this concept of one-sidedness, because I was for a very long time. And so let me just quickly explain, first of all, what it is. One-sidedness is when someone subconsciously relies on just one part of their personality or perspective and just completely ignores other parts. So it's like just seeing things in one way and not considering other ways of looking at things, and this can make it hard for people to deal with different situations or understand how others feel. Or it could make it hard for people to just deal with one situation, like myself, because I have no focus. I really find it hard to focus and just deal with one situation, right? So it goes both ways. They might be really focused on details and then just completely miss the bigger picture. Or maybe they're just going to rely on logic all the time, and that kind of makes it hard for them to connect with people emotionally. And again, vice versa. And I mean, this is not even scratching the surface, like, of what one-sidedness is. I mean, it's so much more deep and complex and comprehensive than that. But just to give you some idea, this is what I'm talking about when I say one-sidedness. And, it's an issue that affects people in different ways and causes many different problems in all areas of life, because one-sidedness can come in all different forms, because there are so many different types of polarities in the world. And the context of which I'm speaking about one-sidedness actually comes from the ideas of Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung. He was a big name in psychology. If you've come across the term introversion and extroversion, then you've stumbled across his works, because he was the one to identify these two orientations and why people act so differently from one another. And honestly, I think one of his most interesting contributions is this concept of one-sidedness. And I think the reason why is because of the fact that it's so easy for people to completely miss the fact that they are being one-sided. Again, due to the fact that one-sidedness is usually subconscious, and we don't recognise it until someone else may point it out to us. Or unless it gets to the point where, we've been one-sided for so long and just major problems are occurring in our life, and the way we normally handle or deal with them just don't work, and so we're kind of forced to change, right? So this issue of one-sidedness is a real thing, and it affects real people without them really knowing or understanding how to resolve the issues that arise from one-sidedness. And so what I want to do in this video is alongside sharing my own journey as to, how I overcame one-sidedness, I want to also give a quick overview of the 16 personality types and, show how each of them might show up differently in their one-sidedness, or how their one-sidedness might show up differently in their lives. And be sure to see if you recognise yourself in any of them, because this could be an entry point into identifying maybe some recurrent issues and problems that you might be experiencing in your life and you don't know why. Okay, so I've covered a basic description of what one-sidedness is, well, from a psychological perspective. So let's connect that to Islam. You know, because we're Muslim, we don't just rely on a secular lens of psychology as our foundation to understand the world and everything in it. Islam is our foundation. So let's see how this concept of one-sidedness actually connects to Islam. Now, there's a statement in Islam, a very famous statement that every Muslim should know, by the way. And if you don't, it's okay. You know, no judgment here. But it's a statement in Usul Thalatha, the three fundamental principles, which is knowledge precedes speech and action, right? And I was thinking about this statement recently. My foot has gone so numb and I've only just realised on one side and on my feet. So I was thinking about this statement and I realised, like, this statement, knowledge precedes speech and action, it's actually an advice to not be one-sided, like with either your knowledge or your speech and action. Because some people are actually prone to knowing things and not speaking or acting upon them, or, you know, what they know. Or they could be prone to speaking and acting without knowledge. And so, yeah, this statement, knowledge precedes speech and action, already taught us about the concept of being balanced, and obviously dispraises one-sidedness. And this is important to understand, because every single situation that we find ourselves in life, it's going to be because of something like an action we took or something we said. And if what we said or done was something out of ignorance, it will, if not immediately, it will eventually have some kind of consequence, right? However, the opposite is also true, because if it was the case that if you had knowledge, and let me just make one thing clear, because a lot of people are mistaken with regards to what knowing is. Knowing isn't just limited to up here. Knowing is in here as well. Your heart has intelligence. But obviously its knowing is different to the knowing of the mind, right? And there have been many studies to prove that the heart has intelligence. That might be another topic I'll go into in the future, inshallah. But let's just say that you knew something, right? And when I say you knew something, I mean like you had true knowing, right? You weren't mistaken, you weren't misunderstood, and you decide not to speak up or not to act upon what you know, like you just withheld it, that will also cause some kind of consequence. So whether you choose to act without knowing or know without acting, either way you're going to suffer some kind of consequence, you know, and it will also have some kind of external impact. You know, you can't be one-sided with your knowledge, speech and action, because they're intrinsically linked. And not only that, but it's like your knowledge, speech and action, it's also the foundation from which all other aspects of our life unfold. Like everything that has happened in our life returns back to our knowledge, speech and action. Which is why this advice, you know, mentioned in Usul Thalatha, the three fundamental principles, right, is foundational. Take that into consideration. Like the course of our existence is shaped by what we do or don't know, what we do or don't communicate, and how we act or don't act, right? It's literally the core from which everything in our lives originate. So when we're too one-sided with one or the other, we will experience an imbalance in our life in general. Now, honestly, like I feel like I've been one-sided most of my life. And I don't mean just like one-sided on one end. Like I've been on both ends of the spectrum, like literally one-sided on both ends of the spectrum. So me before Islam, you could put me in the category of people who just speak and act without knowing, because I had no knowledge, like I had no guidance. And I'm pretty sure most of us in the Western world didn't. I wasn't even exposed to knowledge. Like seriously, I had no sense of self-discipline, no guidance, no purpose. Like knowing what I know now, I can see how much I did not know before I was Muslim. Like I lacked insight, I lacked understanding before Islam. I honestly knew nothing. Like I can't emphasize enough how much I did not know. And I wasn't intentionally ignorant, because I have always been like naturally quite curious. I've always had like a curious nature, but that would come out in the form of like reading conspiracy theories, and entertaining people like David Icke, who believes that aliens are controlling the moon from the earth. I was actually one of them people. Like I believed the world was going to end in 2012 and like Planet X was going to collide with the earth, and that we're all going to burn to death on one side and drown on the other. Like, I was convinced. So that's the kind of person I was, you know, just someone who was curious, but someone who didn't have any definitive understanding or any objective knowledge that would have made me balanced in my knowledge, speech and action. I always think about this one time I brought my friend a gift, like this jumper, which I really liked, but I don't think she did, because I gave her the jumper and she's like, can't you just like return that and get me like a book voucher or something? And even though I was like, you know, secretly hurt, in my mind I'm thinking, books? Like, really? Who the heck reads books, you geek? Like, this was the mindset I had. I was about 16 at the time, and believe it or not, that was the first time like I was ever introduced to the idea of reading, like, for pleasure. I didn't even know my friend liked to read. I had no idea. So yeah, when she said that, I realised, like, people do this for pleasure. Like, is this what you do for entertainment? The only other reading that I knew about was the reading that you're forced to do in school. And I mean, most of the time I was high, not even paying attention. So yeah, totally deprived of knowledge. I was just living that typical Western lifestyle where you just kind of go through the system. You're not really stopping to think about deeper contemplations about your existence. You're not made to question anything in life, you know, just kind of going with the flow and like living life as it comes, right? So living that lifestyle, just excessive freedom, no guidance, you can imagine you naturally become one-sided. You know, someone who just speaks and acts without knowledge. Like, that's who I was. That was just my existence. You know, I made all kinds of decisions that weren't necessarily in my best interest. And long story short, I eventually ended up experiencing quite a difficult heartbreak. And that was in like May 2012. And that was honestly a turning point for me. That experience, it shaped my life in a very significant way because it just shifted my focus. You know, I started to think about my actions more. Like, the person I had been up until that point was someone who was very carefree, I guess you could say, very outgoing, a little bit clueless, to say the least. But experiencing heartbreak, like that feeling, it really set me in a different direction. Well, to begin with, I tried dealing with the heartbreak in the same ways that I would deal with, you know, any difficulties in life that I experienced, which was usually through songwriting. Yeah, I used to sing and songwrite, and that was my passion. It was my way of dealing with stuff. If ever I was going through something, I would just sit and write a song about it. It would just help me express myself. And so when I tried turning to the thing that I would always do, which again is from my one-sidedness, it just made the experience harder. Because, I mean, I'm writing about something that is breaking my heart. So it's keeping me focused on the thing that is hurting me, you know? And obviously I just wanted to forget about it. And so instinctively, I knew that I had to take a different approach to, you know, in order to deal with this problem. And that's when I start turning towards knowledge, you know, reading books, specifically Islamic books. And it was the only thing that had a healing effect on me. And that honestly changed the course of my life. Literally, I ended up, so from May 2012 till like, because I ended up taking my Shahada in 2012, like September time. So during that period, I was just becoming a bit more like contemplative, a bit more reflective. You probably think I'm going to tell you that I became religious and, you know, I found balance and all my problems were solved, but no. I went in the complete opposite direction. I mean, I just done a whole 180. You know, before Islam, I was one-sided with my open-mindedness, with my curiosity and my outgoingness and my friendliness. But my heartbreak experience, that led me to become very closed off. Like, I went the other side. When I reverted to Islam, like I said, I just switched up and became the opposite of kind of what I was before. Like, very fearful, very obedient, excessive learning, extremely reserved. You know, I can imagine like everyone who knew me at the time just did not recognise me. And so this was obviously another type of one-sidedness that I subconsciously ended up internalising, although I wasn't aware of it at the time. So one of the things I'd done as a new Muslim, and probably for a good 7 years into my Muslim life, was completely cut myself off from anything outside of Islam. Like, I wasn't interested. I wanted nothing to do with it. I was especially like dismissive of secularist people who just disassociate from God. Any worldly knowledge I believed was fundamentally flawed because worldly knowledge came from humans, and humans were intellectually deficient. And I wanted nothing to do with their little deficient theories. Like, this is my mindset at the time, by the way. And obviously at the time, like, it was exactly the way I needed to be, right? So from 2012 till like 2019, I was very careful about what I was feeding my brain, what I was giving my heart access to, who I was hanging around with. And obviously looking back, what I can see now that I couldn't see before is this behaviour was actually, it was subconsciously rooted in fear that stemmed from the heartbreak that I experienced. Because that heartbreak was really hard for me. Never had one before. I was clueless. And I'm not all good with emotional processing anyway. And so that did play a big part in how I became so closed off. But obviously, because I became that way for so long, it just became part of my developed self. And I mean, although that way of living, I was very guarded, but it did set me up in terms of building my relationship with Allah, establishing myself as a Muslim, and just rectifying myself like spiritually. However, due to the one-sided nature of it made me lose touch with like more personal, more physical aspects of my life, like not building a career for myself. I could have been a millionaire right now. Like, seriously, the amount of ideas, like business ideas that I have, but I just closed myself off from the world. I also lost touch with a lot of people that I knew and like really cared about. I just became tunnel visioned on Islam. And Islam doesn't actually teach people to be excessive like that, you know? So I know that behaviour was connected to my own one-sidedness, and just because of how I became so protective about this newfound safe haven, which was Islam. You know, because Islam gave me something I never had. It gave me direction, like ultimately just gave me true understanding as to why the heck I even exist in this world. Like, why am I here? How did I get here? You know, answered all them questions. And so I just became hyper-focused on it. I would say that's my experience, you know, with the opposite type of one-sidedness. Kind of going from being hyper-focused on physical, superficial, worldly things and being void of knowledge, to then being hyper-focused on my religion and just disassociating myself from, like, worldly things and just becoming, what's that word? Asceticism? I don't know, there's a word to describe people who, like, they disassociate from the world. Zahid, I became a Zahid. You know, you need to find balance between the two. Well, I needed to find balance between the two. And of course, I'm always going to prioritise Islam. There's no doubt. Like, what Islam does for me spiritually and would do for every single human, because it was made for the human as a guide, a comprehensive guide to life. But I am at a point now where I'm starting to kind of integrate more worldly things into my religious lifestyle. Now, these two contrasting lifestyles that I have lived, it has taught me so much about the unhealthy nature of being too one-sided. And one-sidedness, by the way, one-sidedness, like I said in the beginning, polarities come in all different forms. So one-sidedness also comes in many different forms. You know, you can become hyper-focused on your career and then maybe neglect your own needs, right? Just become hyper-focused on what you need to do, like your responsibilities and stuff like that, and just completely neglect your emotional needs. Or you could become hyper-focused on your appearance, you know, and lose your true self in the process, because who you are on a deeper level gets buried under layers and layers of makeup and designer and muscle. Like, even social media, when you give excessive attention to it and you literally just build relationships on social media, you lose touch with real life interaction and building, you know, real, true and authentic connections. So one-sidedness is a real thing, and something we should try and identify in our own lives, because it could be the cause, as I said, for reoccurring problems that you may not even know are problems, right? You may not even know. Like they say, the dead don't feel the pain of a wound. Like, if you don't recognise that something is bad, you may not also even recognise the ill effects of it, if that makes sense. And you know, something that amazes me, actually, just kind of moving on, like, something that amazes me is the need for balance is actually reflected in the nature of Allah's creation anyway, like in the tangible things that exist in the world. Like, when you reflect on Allah's creation, like Allah told us to in the Quran, he said, you know, and those who reflect are the people of understanding, those who reflect on Allah's signs of a people of understanding. When you contemplate on Allah's creation, you know, you can look at something quite simple and derive a deeper meaning. Like, you can actually derive lessons from that thing that gives you wisdom and knowledge. For example, like talking about balance, if you hold your breath for too long, you're going to pass out or die. Well, you can't really, I don't think you can hold your breath to the point where you die, because you're naturally going to want to exhale. But again, it shows you need like the need for balance. If you sleep for too long, you're not going to function physically, because you're depriving yourself of food and water that you need to sustain your energy. Or even if you don't sleep enough, you're not going to function mentally, right? Because obviously you need sleep to maintain your mental health. There are so many signs in Allah's creation that reflect the importance of balance within pairs, right? Because Allah created things in pairs. And he mentions this in Surah Yasin. I think it's verse 36, Surah Yasin, where Allah said, "Glory be to the one who created things in pairs, in whatever the earth produces, and in mankind's own selves, and in that of which they have no knowledge." SubhanAllah, this verse is so powerful, especially when you're reflecting on one-sidedness. Like, the fact that Allah told us that he created things in pairs to begin with, like, shows that truth holds great significance. For some reasons we may not never know, but we can see the significance of it when we reflect on pairs and we reflect on opposites. Obviously, there's things that have existed in the past that we have not had knowledge on, but now we have access to knowing about, and one of them is the system of personality. Like, we've only recently come to learn about the nuances in the system of personality. Like, we now have detailed evidence about how humans operate, for example. And what we know now that we didn't know before is Allah, the way that he's constructed like the system of our brains is with contrasting mental processes that come in pairs. SubhanAllah, imagine that. And this is exactly what Carl Jung spoke about, you know, in his theory of the collective unconscious and personality, psychological type, differences in psychological functioning. For example, humans have introverted and extroverted tendencies, two contrasting attitudes that are intrinsically linked. Even though they're opposite in nature, they are a pair, right? Also, he mentioned about sensing and intuition. Again, two contrasting or oppositional ways of learning. Again, oppositional, but they are a pair. Thinking and feeling, two contrasting ways of organising information. They are a pair, although they're opposite in nature. I mean, considering like everything that we've reflected on with regards to like being one-sided and that leading to negative outcomes, the fact that we are also made up of internal polarities kind of shows us that we also need to make sure that we balance ourselves. For example, if we become too introverted, we might never achieve anything in life because we will never open up ourselves to opportunities, or maybe never express what is truly meaningful to us. And if we become too extroverted, although we may, you know, scatter about the earth and we might gain a lot of experience, we might even achieve a lot in life, but we might end up feeling really empty inside because having a bunch of stuff that doesn't really mean anything to us on a personal level, it's just going to make you feel, again, one-sided. You need balance. You need to make sure everything you've gained is meaningful to you. All right, so understanding the concept of balance within psychological type, it made me realise how necessary balance is in every single area of our life. And so to conclude because I feel like I've already been talking so much, to conclude like my journey of overcoming one-sidedness, now I'm on a journey to like finding balance between my physical worldly life and the spiritual nature of my religion. And I'm still learning how to do that, but just opening myself up to the idea, like I can already see so many improvements in my life. Like, I really didn't know how to find balance before I discovered psychological type. I didn't know where to place myself, you know, and integrate myself as a Muslim woman, even though I was raised in a world and a place where people were disconnected from religion. Like, that's not where I came from, right? I didn't come from a religious family. I'm a revert. So I didn't know how to integrate myself with that same world that I left, that goes against my current values, you know, where people high off drugs and depressed and, no offence, but sleeping around and committing suicide and identifying as inanimate objects. And I really don't mean to be disrespectful, but to me this is bizarre, and to most people it is also bizarre. However, on the flip side, after exploring like psychological type theories and understanding human behaviour on a scientific level now, like I have a logical framework for understanding why life outside of religion goes to the extent that it does, or like how it becomes the way it does. Having a framework for understanding that, it alleviated my worries about engaging with ideas and with people outside of Islam. You know, because just like Islam provided me with a framework for understanding the purpose of my life, right, and why I exist on this earth and what my role here is, you know, objectively, psychological type, it offered me a new framework for understanding like a different area of life that I for a very long time was disconnected from, you know. And that framework gave me understanding around human motivations and their actions and the collective impact. And that's just really interesting to me. So it just fascinates me, which is now probably why I'm more open to it, you know. It's just interesting. Like, I look at people now, I used to look at someone and be like, if I hang around with you, I might get infected by your whatever it is you're doing. I don't know. I don't want to start drinking alcohol. I don't want to meet these people. Like, that's honestly how I used to think. I'm not going to lie. And I'm not a judgmental person, but I come from that lifestyle and I know where it leads. So I would look at people and I would be more judgmental. But now I look at people and I think, oh, I wonder what cognitive processes you're using. I wonder what mistakes you've made in your life based upon the decision-making processes that you use. This is how I think now. Like, I see so many opportunities for like learning from all different types of people and how we can offer valuable lessons to each other. And I am so much happier in life because of that. I'm not even joking. Like, having this mindset, especially as a Muslim, is so important because, you know, as Muslims, we are encouraged to demonstrate the higher standard of character. And that's not on a self-righteous pedestal, by the way. Please, sometimes I feel like the things I say just come out wrong. But we are, like the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said that I've not been sent except to perfect good character. So Muslims are encouraged to actually show good character. And I think because we live in such a degenerate world these days, when people try to display, you know, righteousness and try to follow the path of good, they instantly be judged as, oh, you're self-righteous or you're sitting on a pedestal. That's honestly not how it is. Like, we're just trying our best and we are just as flawed as anyone else. But knowing that the Prophet ﷺ, he was sent to perfect character, and realising that being overly one-sided, including in religious adherence, like, this is going to shut out non-religious people. And that just shows real poor character. So opening yourselves up to people and things outside of, you know, our immediate religious community, like, not only does it demonstrate good character, but it's a step towards like active change and growth. You know, Allah, I'm not sure if it's in the Quran, if it's an ayah, or if it's an athar, or if it's a hadith, I don't know, but Allah mentioned something about how he created tribes and nations so that they may know one another. Like, we need to come together because there's a lot to learn from different types of peoples, different types of nations, because we all have different experiences and we can teach each other things about areas of life that we're more unfamiliar with and that we could learn from someone else.